Isumenifunga kokoro, isumenifunga minyororo, hata kwenye giza totoro, baby. Nachitaji ni uwepo wako na ni sawa. When you make me Romeo, na kisha kupona mie, sikimshafunga kwa komeo, ya usisikie. Mabaya wanasema unifai, wanasema yetu mahali na kwenye mpenzi na imani, baby. Mabaya wanasema unifai, wanasema yetu mahali na kwenye mpenzi na imani, baby. This kind of love, utakata kwa ila of love. This kind of love, utakata kwa sponsor of love. Ora dinite, tikete, mama nite, tikete, ola kumbala thamani, ila kumbala thamani. Ora dinite, tikete, mama nite, tikete, ola kumbala thamani, ila kumbala thamani. Wabaya wanasema unifai, wanasema yetu na hadina, wenye mpenzi baby, wabaya wanasema unifai, wanasema yetu na hadina, wenye mpenzi na imani, baby. Yes, mtakata kwa ilo this kind of love, mtakata kwa sponsor of love. This kind of love, mtakata kwa ilo.
All right, let's do this. Bwana Abok, how are you? Abok. Bwana Abok. All right. Maybe before Abok comes, so I want to introduce tonight's conversation. So I want to welcome all for this conversation tonight. So tonight we are having a conversation about looking at the global impact of COVID-19. So we'll be having this conversation for some time. So you are welcome to join. If you want to join this conversation, it's very easy to join using the link at the comment box. You just click on it, takes you into the studio, and then you'll be able to have this conversation. So so that's very easy. So I want to see my guest Abok. Abok, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay.
I'll be introducing my video shortly.
Oh.
Yeah.
So is that Wekesa Muhiani? Who is that?
Yes.
Abok. Abok. All right. So so Abok will be settling down for that. So just a minute, I'll be getting him on this. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Abok, are you settled down? Abok? All right.
Yes, Patrick.
Right.
I've heard you calling my name.
Yeah, I was wondering if you are still there or you are settled there, so we can start. Yes.
Yeah, I think I can take 2 more minutes to settle.
Oh, no problem.
Uh,
So maybe I can take those two moments maybe to just mention that tonight we are having a conversation about looking at the global impact of COVID-19. So you are very welcome to join this conversation. It's easy to join. So before you join, maybe I can introduce Conrad. Conrad, can you introduce yourself and then we go to this conversation?
mm.
Conrad? Conrad? Right. I'm sorry. Seems we are having some technical issues, but I'm trying, we can solve this. Yeah, so, right. So we lost Conrad. So, Alphonse, how are you? Issues, but I'm trying, we can solve this. Yeah, so, Alphonse,
Hey,
it seems tonight we might have some technical hitch here and there.
it's okay.
Yeah, so
It's
anyway,
part of life.
true. All right. So, yeah. So, Alphonse, maybe before we can actually start this conversation tonight, maybe you can do a very quick introduction about yourself and then we go to this conversation.
My name is Alphonce Were. I'm based in Nairobi. I'm a consultant in labor issues and labor policy matters. Yes.
All right. Good. So, Alphonse, so we are having a conversation about the global impact of COVID-19. And I think when we talk about what's happening in the world, maybe first of all, let's check. Let's start from home. Kenya, we have around so far 781 confirmed cases, 284 have recovered, 45 are deaths. So, what do you make of these kind of statistics?
They are misleading in several ways. One, I don't think that everybody who has died in the 45 died as a result of COVID. Only that they died when they had multiple diseases, COVID being one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know at what point we ascertain that COVID has killed someone. But definitely, like that young boy who died in ICU, he went to ICU not because of COVID. And he must have contracted COVID in ICU. And then he died there, and then we reported him as a COVID death. I think what I have taken to the COVID deaths to mean in the face value, it simply means somebody who has died and tested positive to COVID, but not necessarily somebody who has died as a result of having COVID killing them. So that is the first thing. I would want to hear what others will have to say, but to me, that is the first point of looking at it. So we need a more precise way of understanding how, at what point do we say so COVID that is responsible for their death. Yeah, and then the other issue is we are talking about recovery. Now,
Yeah.
this recovery is also, we must be clear that they are not recovery as a result of treatment. Yeah, they're not treated. A few have a smaller percentage, those who are critical also have been managed from the hospital perspective, but majority of them, one are asymptomatic, meaning that they are not even aware they are sick. So even they can be in contention with the government being told that they are sick. But on the other hand, there's another group also that have mild cases. So even though they feel some symptoms of sickness, but they're not substantive reasons for them to even know they are sick, particularly in our environment in Kenya, where most of our sicknesses somebody must feel that they are getting down to actually pronounce themselves sick. most of the time we are sick and we walk around as if nothing is majorly wrong. And if you tell others you are sick, they will say you like crying around instead of just manning up and living your normal life. So I think with that perspective, there's some level and some degree of being misled by the COVID reporting. What is only clear is that the COVID reports are COVID is a real situation, so it's not a make-up situation. It's a condition, it's a disease, it's a virus that exists among us, and it has its own impact, and it has shut down the whole world, so we cannot ignore it. Yeah.
Interesting. So Kevin is here, and Kevin gives us raw data from what's happening. Kevin, can you tell us what does your data say?
Okay, let me just check what my data said. Yeah, well, in Johns Hopkins is always 1 day behind. So, but what's happening right now is that in the whole world, we have over 4.5 million cases of COVID-19 in the whole world right now. If you look at that keenly, that is more than the population of Nairobi City. So if you think about the entire population of Nairobi City right now is having COVID-19, well, that is a crazy idea. But the other bad news, or I think it's still bad news all the same, is that the United States is the one leading with the cases and deaths as well. So Africa has been spared a little. We've dodged the bullet, but we are not out of the woods. So there is, today there was an article from, I think it was either WHO or United Nations, saying that Africa in the next 12 months, we could be seeing close to 250 million cases of COVID-19. So the fact that we are seeing slow cases of COVID-19 rising now doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to be safe from COVID-19 all throughout. What could happen is we could be getting these slow infections coming in slowly, but because our health systems are weak, we might end up having these COVID-19 cases for a prolonged period of time while the entire world is getting rid of COVID. We might still be having COVID in Africa for a longer time than expected. So those are some of the things that are happening in the world right now.
All right, interesting. So I want to maybe before Abok comes, I think Abok, are you still there? All right, before Abok comes, I want to bring Conrad. Conrad, can you unmute your mic? Conrad. All right, so Conrad seems to have also some challenges. Conrad, are you there? All right, okay. I'll go to Abok. Abok, are you there? So maybe Abok, yeah, I should ask you this question, Abok. Yeah, what's going to be the impact of, especially, let's look at business as a whole of this COVID-19? Maybe trading, imports, exports. There's so many people who are saying now they cannot be able even to even import. And also some countries like I saw Australia, maybe I saw this from Kevin also. They were saying that they are saying in the next 2 months, they might not have some flights leaving Nairobi. So what's happening? Abok.
Thank you so much. Yes. Are we together?
Yes, very.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for the session today. For those who do not know me, I'm Bernard Abok, a lover of agriculture and agribusiness. The topic for today is a bit interesting. We are having a global problem that should have a global solution, but we are taken back to individual countries to look at a specific solution. I was raised in a polygamous family, and there was a quote that used to be there that kila mtoto arudi acheze kwa mlango yao, and this is exactly what is happening today. Everyone is playing within the boundaries of their own countries. Even if a president becomes sick today, he cannot cross and go get treated elsewhere. So sisi tumewekwa kwa nchi yetu na kila mtu amewekwa kwa nchi yao. Now, what you have asked is very elaborate and it's a wide area, but let me restrict myself even to trade and what we can call balance of trade. In this particular case, we cannot talk about any country that is favored against the other. When this thing started, the flow, the supply chain was very complete until restrictions were imposed. Each and every country imposing a restriction on travel, on flights, and so many other things. And a trade basically is a chain. And when one link is removed from the chain, then there is a complete cutoff of the services. And therefore, in the beginning of March, the prices of commodities were very stable. Even in the month of April, they were somehow very, very stable. I want to talk about just essential services and especially agricultural products. The flow or the supply have been cut off, but not cut off as such, as in we still have exchange of goods and services between different countries. What has affected the supply chain is now the limited means of transport. For example, we no longer have passenger flights, and passenger flights use also to carry cargo. So the limited cargo flights that are there tripled the flight or the freight rates. So this means that the prices of commodities went higher or are still higher in importing countries. But again, we also have to look at the impact of supply and demand, how they interact. When demand is low, when supply is higher, demand is low, and the reverse is true. Here we are talking about a case where people rush to buy items in the beginning, and then they went mute, they went home and slept. So nobody was buying. So this means that prices, supply went higher and the prices went down. And they went down until people realized that this thing is with us for a long time, and people started going back to their normal behavior. So you'll realize that in terms of agricultural sector has been affected, just like I explained in the previous show. We have logistical challenges. We have the cutoff of the supply of farm inputs. We have the cutoff from the market, and quite a number of issues. I think I'm going to talk about them as we proceed.
All right, interesting. So before I come to Alphonse, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. I don't know if I jump to you or I go to Kevin. I want to talk about artificial intelligence and data, how maybe that can help us. But anyway, Alphonse, so if like Apok is saying, this is like a polygamous family. Kila mtu anaambiwa acheze kwao. Now, what does this mean when it comes to countries that did not actually maybe build their countries to be self-sufficient? Alphonse, sorry, you are unmute your mic. Unmute your mic. Good.
Dan, can you hear me?
Yeah, true. Yeah, proceed.
Yeah, I was saying this is it's a bit it is striking for those of us who understand what we call global politics and economics, and what we call paradigm shift. What I'm thinking is this: number one, we have never gotten independence since we got colonized. The form of colonization is what has been changing. Also, we have never gotten out of the woods when it comes to terms of slavery. How slavery is practiced is what has changed. We used to be captured to go and work in Europe or US. Or we go to the US farms and Europe factories. That was the essence of slave trade and slavery, so that we have cheap labor available at the master's need, convenience at almost zero cost. Now, when the world decided to change that order, they just decided to ask themselves, how can we get this labor without necessarily capturing these people? And the transition up to where we are now is that today you will not be captured to go and offer the service, but you will be deprived of every basic requirement of life, to the extent that now you have to go and ask the same person to give you an opportunity so that you can get something small in return to go and survive with it. And that's now the production line. So this is a trade or war along production line. Now, if we were to learn from this, then the first thing is we must know that nothing good comes at no cost. So we need our independence like yesterday. And here is the entire global south. There's a set of countries we refer to as global south. The economists people refer to as third world countries in the past, or upcoming economies and something like that. Or yeah, so but the poor countries, that's how they are called, but they're not necessarily poor. They have a lot of wealth naturally, but they're not allowed to use their wealth in their own way for their own benefit. Now, what we need to be very clear is these countries are many in number. Then if they had a chance, which they don't have at the moment, to gang up and say we must remain on our own, so that we are not controlled by the US. Because I don't understand why US will always give people sanctions. If they don't agree with you, then everybody else must not agree with you. Yeah, we are practicing economics of the US and the UK. We are practicing modernity of the US and the UK globally. And anybody who does not toe that line is literally an enemy. And that will tell you why Gaddafi was not popular. That will tell you why Mugabe from nowhere became not popular when he was extremely popular. It will talk to you about other leaders, including the North Korean ones. When North Korea is an ally to Russia and China, then they stop being popular to the West, because now they are not following the economic system of the West. Now, that economic system of the West makes us depend to the West. So when Abok is talking to us about agribusiness, the truth is that where we sell our produce, or we assume to be selling our produce, is the West, whether it is Europe or Americas. Yeah, and that's where we get most of our income. But again, that's where also we have a lot of problem in terms of our biggest loans and liabilities that can make us not to grow on our own comes from the same side. And our balance of trade is always negative. Our trading benefits are always biased to the West, not on our side. So I think this calls for a more sober mindset for the locals, the people themselves, not the leaders, because the leaders are bought. Leaders are practically bought, and therefore they don't serve the benefits of the locals, of the people. So it is you and me who must now challenge the status quo. It is not going to be easy. It may not be fully or halfway realized in our lifetime, but we can use this moment to trigger that change, that revolution, that moment of going up, to depend on ourselves. Why do you think we cannot do our own value addition to coffee, and we sell the coffee that is ready? Yet we have the coffee here. Yeah, why should the person handling our coffee at the auction has a better price and a better life than the farmer? Yeah, I don't understand. And then the coffee itself, those consumers of the coffee, they pay very well, but then who earns the most? Somebody who even doesn't know how a seedling is handled. It's a moment of internal and self-reflection for countries like Kenya and such.
That's interesting. Now, also, Jackie, she's saying she's in Europe, so she's saying she's going to join this conversation to offer her perspective in terms of how we move from the global north to the global south. And also, she's saying the British American empires holding the entire world ransom.
Correct. I agree with her 100%, and we don't need to be held that ransom.
Mm-hmm. So she will be joining this conversation, and we need to get her perspective. Since she's in Europe, she needs to tell us how we move this going forward. Now, I want to come, Kevin. My question is this: in terms of course, Alphonse is saying maybe we have been held ransom for a long time. Now the question is, we are not even sustainable. There's some countries in Africa who are not sustainable. They cannot take care of themselves or their own people. Now, can even countries like us use data, to try and solve some problems we have? And what's the role of artificial intelligence in times like this and also going forward?
Okay, thank you, Patrick. I think my take on that would be artificial intelligence and stuff like that are things that normally would take some time to implement. They would first of all take some time to develop, and then take some time to implement and actually make it work. So right now, what we're seeing with COVID-19, even in developed countries, is that people are transforming existing technologies that were being used in other industries, and then being adapted to work for COVID-19. And we've also seen this in Africa as well. I think South Africa, for example, they were able to use a technology they were using to track, something to do with anti-poaching. So this has been used in the wildlife sector for a while now. So the anti-poaching technology that they were using to track, poachers and how animals are moving around in the wilderness is the same one they have now adapted to track COVID-19.
Yeah.
And in other parts of the world, for example, I also saw this in I think in California, United States, they were using drones to deliver medical supplies for COVID-19 because of the social distancing thing and the lockdown and all that stuff. So my take on artificial intelligence coming into this would be that is too much work, but we don't have that time right now. But we can adapt existing technologies to help with this. In Kenya, we have a number of them, and I think we can adapt them if the government was serious. We even have logistics like freight management, fleet management, all those technologies that work. I mean, even your cars right now has a tracker. Well, so those kind of things, if you think about them carefully, there are low-lying fruits that people can grab easily and get away with. In terms of data, we have very little data to work with. Even the data that we have is probably not sufficient. It's probably giving us inaccurate. We are going to make some decisions that are not really helpful. For example, given the Tanzania case, they have not reported any cases. In fact, they stopped doing testing, and they have not reported any case for the last 3 weeks now. So if you are to pull East African data together and try to find out something meaningful from it, you will be highly misled because Tanzania is going to really mislead you right now. So I think those are some of the things I can say concerning that.
Interesting. So Abok, Kevin is mentioning Tanzania, and what I'm saying in Tanzania is, to me, I cannot understand. First, let's start. Why is Tanzania not sharing information? I mean, these are crises that is going to affect East Africa. So why is it not sharing this information? And Abok, how do you see we going to be affected? Because I think we saw news that the government is closing the border of Hispania, and I mean, it seems like if they are not sharing what's happening in Tanzania, what's your take? So sorry, Abok, still unmute your mic. Unmute again. Okay. All right, proceed.
No, yeah. Yeah, I don't want to talk so much about Tanzania and her policies regarding COVID-19, but I can tell you I was there at the border of Namanga, including yesterday and yesterday evening, and you'll find a complete contrast of how we are dealing with COVID-19 and how they are looking at the whole thing. The matatus will still carry even up to 16 people when they are supposed to carry 12. They will not keep self-distancing. They will not even consider putting on a mask. So it's a case of ignorance that I may not be in a position to understand exactly, but I can tell you it started with the leader, and now everyone is looking at the leader. If he himself is said tuchape kazi, basi wewe ni nani ukuje utuambie kwamba hii ugonjwa iko. Number two, they were releasing results at some point, then they stopped completely. You remember he even came out in public to say that they tested oil, they tested pawpaw, they tested a goat, they tested a bat, they tested quite a number of things, and all of them, some of them turned positive, others turned invalid, something like that. He was in a mission to invalidate the existence of COVID, and number two, even the authenticity of the testing kits. So for them and for him, maybe he was alluding to the fact that maybe, just maybe, number one, COVID may not be existing. Number two, it may be a cooked idea, even by the testing, or those countries that are giving us the testing kits. I just want to look at it in the sense of how Tanzania and Kenya relate in terms of business. You remember our markets, our open air markets, 90% of, say, onions are coming from Tanzania, and they are really loved. What is this? Yeah, and they are really loved in our economy. You look at oranges, you look at things like ginger, you look at things like even cereals. A lot of them come from there. Again, even trucks that are bringing in groundnuts from Zambia, Mozambique, all of them are passing through Tanzania before they get into Kenya. Yesterday, I saw a whole 2 kilometers of trucks just waiting for them to be tested before they can be released into Kenya. Again, one interesting thing is whether you are tested in Tanzania, when you get to the borders, you have to be tested again, because it's like the two countries are not reading from the same script. And when the neighbors are not reading from the same script, it means that their policies are clashing. And who is there to bear the consequences is you and I, because number one, if basic commodities are not allowed in the country, then the prices are going to be high, and therefore you are going to fork more for something that would have come at a relatively cheaper price. So the policies or the approach that they are taking is really having a big impact even on us. Not in the sense that we are going to have more cases coming across the border, but even in terms of the food supply chain, in terms of the prices of the basic commodities. They ignored this, but for us, we don't want to ignore that. And therefore, we have to subject their citizens to some of the tough conditions that we have set as a country. So you realize that a lot of interruptions, especially at the border, is causing prices to go to increase. I'm not sure whether the borders are going to be closed completely because number one, we don't have those strict borders that are being closed. If you look at Namanga, it is the official border point, but there are so many border points that if are not checked, then we may find we still have people coming in and going out. Every border there is no man's land, and I can tell you, in no man's land, nobody bothers and nobody cares about what is taking place there. It is there. It is there in Namanga. I believe it is there in Hispania, and therefore, my take is looking at the way things are, especially in that country. I can tell you, with the limited information I have, those people have died. And if you dare announce or tell somebody about that, you know what will befall you. So you don't even talk about it. They don't even talk about it. There were Maasais who went for their kings who died. They went and it caused chaos. You've never seen that in any of them. So it's a complete situation of ignorance. It's a complete situation of someone who is hell-bent in proving things that are not existing. So in terms of food, I know it's going to affect us so much because not just Tanzania alone, but even all the way from Zambia. Yeah.
Interesting. That's a really interesting take. But now, maybe Alphonse, I think we have been having a very issue. We have been having issues between Kenya and Tanzania in terms of how we view policies. But now, when it comes to East Africa, of course, I think to defeat even diseases, data is the most important. So from your own, maybe from what Abok is saying, is this a threat for the sustainability of East Africa? And food security, when we talk about food security and how we can actually...
Let me start with looking into perspective. Tanzania is not having a problem with Kenya. It has an issue with its entire neighborhood. In fact, Kenya is one of the most lenient neighbors of Tanzania, so to speak. Our main media houses can even apologize for a whole week for for calling Magufuli mkaidi na ukaidi wake. To me, I think that is even I don't think it's really called for, because the results are now here with us. Zambia closed the border a long time ago, so it's not like it's something. Zambia closed its border with Tanzania, and there's no apology. Yeah. Now, Tanzanian president is a member of East African Community. He was the only one missing in action. Yeah, when it came to the meeting they had on a virtual meeting, the president's head, he was missing. Yeah, and therefore other presidents were able to, Museveni of Uganda, Kenyatta of Kenya, and others were able to discuss minus him. Now, President Pombe Magufuli is also the chairman of SADC region, the Southern African Development Region in the SADC region. He is the current chair as we speak. Now, when the meeting was to be called, he didn't call the meeting. The meeting was called by South Africa, or South African president, and he did not attend. Yeah, and therefore they even discussed minus him, and his pattern. They are doing regional issues to do with COVID. I know of an article I read today from reputable sources and media. They didn't mention specific doctors, but some of the leading doctors and even medical consultants in Tanzania, 5 of them gave information with the request of anonymity And the information is that the numbers of people who are now dying of COVID-related deaths are very many compared to the official numbers that the public is aware of. But one striking one was a small medical facility in Dar es Salaam that has already registered around 60 cases of COVID-19, and they are overwhelmed already because they have a smaller capacity as a facility. They are a private facility, but they can't talk about it. They can't go to the media. They can't do what. So it has been a bit tough for them. And there are some radical moves that have been taken without necessarily saying that the three members of parliament who are initially looking like they are well in terms of health just died, and it's assumed they died and highly speculated they died of COVID-related deaths. Then that led to the parliament itself to be postponed, to come to a halt for a while, or to be adjourned. Now, so Tanzania is not a good neighbor to anyone at the moment. Yeah, Tanzania is a harbor to most of the challenges we are having. So as we speak, Tanzania, we should have an aggressive way of dealing with Tanzania. However, the people we are having who are supposed to make those decisions will not make them. So we are on our own. And as a book says, if you go to these border points, you'll discover. I know of a gentleman at the border of Kenya and Uganda who left Nairobi, and he went home using sneaky routes. So the villagers then discovered that this gentleman from Nairobi is already here. So when they discovered he's already here, they went to the chief, to report this guy, so that the chief and some police officers came to their home. They never got him to date. It's more than 10 days. They have never gotten to him. So some people suspect he has already crossed the border to Uganda. But now people ask themselves, where did he use? And most likely use the porous border points, not the official border points. So I think the issue of borders, it is good for us all and everyone for himself. But I don't think that we have a leadership that is sober enough to make things work in timely manner, and in a manner that can stop this COVID issue. But away from all these issues, I don't think everything is gloomy, because COVID is not going away tomorrow morning. For sure, we are not going even to have vaccination tomorrow, but we have to resume our lives. So there are a few adjustments we will have to make. There's some critical adjustments we'll have to make. There are some few things we'll have to leave at completely, but then life must continue, because we cannot be in this state forever and for the longest time. In the next 2 months, if things remain the same, then things will not be the same.
All right. Kevin, I want to maybe to jump to what's happening maybe in the US and also Europe. What's your data say in terms of what can Kenya learn? Because from what I know,
before you go to Kevin,
those people who are suffering, maybe who have
before you go to Kevin, you asked me a question on the you asked me a question to matters to do with data. Now, one of the hardest questions, and I will want to hear from Kevin now that he is dealing with informatics. How are we using the data we are collecting so far? Those of us who are collecting the data. Yeah, Kenya is collecting data, which so far I also feel the data is not significant enough to make any reasonable decision, looking at the time frame and how much we have done. But how are we using the data so that we can say the data is useful? So that if you don't have the data, this is the advantage you have at the moment.
All right, Kevin, you can answer that question as well as you will answer what's happening in USA and Europe and how maybe we can use that data to inform our next moves in Kenya.
Okay, Alphonse, we are using that data to report to the World Health Organization. It is a requirement. We are also using it. I don't think we are using it to make decisions in Kenya right now, but we are using it to report to the World Health Organization, and that translates to the amount of, the amount of funding we get to fight COVID-19 from the World Health Organization. So in a way, yes, we are using that data to get funding. I would like to believe that the Ministry of Health is taking that data seriously, but I cannot be specific in which way they're actually using it right now. In the United States,
Kevin, just on that one, Kevin.
Okay.
Now that we are reporting to WHO to get funding, so how much more funds have we gotten as Kenya compared to TZ who have not reported? Any idea roughly or a direction so that we say Burundi is not reporting, because Burundi, we are discussing TZ, Burundi is also in the same bracket. Now, Burundi even has sent away the representative of WHO. Now, tell me about the advantage that now we have over Burundi in terms of so far, how much funds have we gotten in relation to Burundi or TZ?
Well, you know what happens in Kenya. We are all aware of the 40 billion coronavirus funds that have already been used, and I'm also aware that the government has received a second disbursement from the World Health Organization towards fighting COVID-19. So those are the only two I'm aware of. I don't know how much it is, but I want to believe it's just the same amount of money that they received before. And
my last thing, sorry, my last thing, then you can talk. Do you think, is this money that we are talking about money that we are supposed to refund at an interest or with some conditions, or is just a grant that we need to support us, and after that we will not be asked to repay?
No, it's a grant. We are not supposed to repay. It's a grant. Yeah, and given what we know,
interesting. Kevin, you can.
Given what we know with Kenya and the grant money, this is going to be really exaggerated, and really, maybe, let me say, because we have corruption in Kenya, it's going to be wasted away. We've witnessed that with the first disbursement, which left us with lots and lots of questions. But I can relate this to the funds that we used to get for HIV. So you see, the PEPFAR organization that funds Africa to fight HIV cuts the amount of money it gives Kenya, but did not cut the amount of money that it gives Uganda. And the reason was because of corruption. So Kenya and Tanzania were affected, but Uganda was not. And the explanation was very simple. We give Kenya so much money to fight HIV, we give Uganda less money than Kenya to fight HIV. But then Uganda's performance is increasingly better. Kenya's performance is worsening. So why would we keep giving Kenya more money? That was the basic explanation they gave. So if this COVID-19 is going to be what we are thinking it's going to be, that is going to be long-term. People have already advised us to start getting used to living with coronavirus. It's going to require that from time to time we manage the funds we receive to fight the COVID-19. And if you're not going to manage it properly, it's going to be slashed, and then we are going to have more issues.
All right, interesting. Now, Dennis, maybe Abok wants to say something. Abok, continue.
Yes, I want to say something. If indeed what Kevin is telling us is the main purpose for the data, then we have all the reasons even to doubt the authenticity of the data that we are receiving daily in terms of the daily updates. Number one, I don't think the government is clear even on the issue of those who have died, because when we are told that some have, around 45 people have died or so, and we are always reminded that there were underlying issues, then it should be known, or it should be made known to us that before Corona, these underlying issues were killing this number of people. And now, because of Corona, the number has increased, or the chances of these people dying have increased, so that we can at least know that this thing really causes death. If the data we are using is for the purposes of getting money from donors and NGOs and whichever, then really I have all the reasons to doubt even the 700 and something numbers that we are being told, because it is a business. It is a business. As we look at it, it's no longer data usage. It is a business. It's a government in business. And you may even find that those who are not giving the right data, or those who are not giving the progressive data, are punished by being not given enough money to fight this virus. So you'll find a cooperative partner benefiting so much, and the non-cooperative one getting even nothing. It's not, if it's the issue of data, then in Kenya we should go back to the basics. Do we really need data, and what do we need it for? If we need data, then probably we should be having more hospitals on the ground. We should be having more teachers on the ground. We should be having roads that are developed, because all these things are there. They take it. The other time they took it. They even asked me whether I have a bicycle. What for? What did they want it for? So they should use this data to empower mwananchi, not to use it to get funds or whichever. Then it's a business. We can talk of a viral business, not corona anymore. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. That's interesting. But anyway, Dennis, Ruth she's also saying that the government of Kenya was not reporting she's actually concurring with what Kevin was saying, that the reporting on HIV was not being done the right way. Maybe that's the issue, yeah? But anyway, Dennis, now let me come to you. Like Kevin is pointing out that we have used some money, of course, to fight COVID-19. But from the data we have right now, people who have died from COVID-19, they are 45. Yeah. And even if you look at people who have died from floods related, they're almost 100 plus. So what do you make up this kind of data? And going forward, which is the prudent way to use data to actually manage a situation?
All these stories about data, but before I proceed, allow me to say hi to Alphonse and Abok and Kevin. Thank you very much. And I'm dealing with the layman side of issue, aspect, while I leave the professional or the expert analysis to Abok and Alphonse, and probably the rest of you that are good in that. Mine is just to be general here. The data provided and the number of people that have died of COVID-19, which has brought our economy and Kenyan way of life to a standstill, is far much less than the number of those that have died out of floods. But that said, every issue here becomes an opportunity for Kenyans to make an extra coin. Those that are in various leadership positions have now taken advantage of this season to make a kill. I mean, there is so much information that we do not really know as Kenyans, and even how they execute the measures that they've spelled out, like quarantine and the rest, is not proper. If you fail to bribe a police officer, the punishment you will get is to be taken to quarantine. So if you do not want to be taken to quarantine, the best you can do is to bribe a police officer. So, I mean, Kenyans ni wale. I mean, COVID-19 is not going to change us. Our corrupt way of life is still inherent in amongst us. And therefore, there is nothing that has changed. And sometimes I live in Kisii, and I've been to town today, and I've seen people are behaving normal. And I'm wondering, we do not have even a single case of COVID-19. And yet we had some people traveling from Nairobi that is under lockdown via motorbike, and they traveled all the way to a place next to my village where I am at the moment. I mean, people are living normal as if there is no COVID-19. So I just want to think there is misreporting of certain information. I just don't want to be ignorant or sound ignorant like His Excellency President Magufuli, because generally he has depicted a quite substantial ignorance in terms of how he should cushion his people or protect his people from contacting this virus. But again, in Kenya, I just want to think that something is not right. And we must also comprehend that we sandwiched between the economic situation of this country and, probably the measures that are supposed to be there too. Because you tell Kenyans to stay at home, what are they going to eat? Most of us live from hand to mouth. So it becomes a little bit hard to have Kenyans stay at home, because if they stay at home without food, they will still die. And then they'd rather, some consider it okay to die of what they don't know or what they don't see, other than dying for what they already know and see and feel. They don't have food. So it becomes a little bit tricky there. And maybe the two experts that we have here or more will be able to delve into that and give expert analysis on that kind of situation, economical aspect versus the threat that we are faced, the COVID-19 threat that we are faced. But as for me, I just want to say government is not doing enough. I'm not satisfied that government is doing enough. It is a season for those that are tasked with the responsibility of executing certain functions with regard to issues COVID-19 to make a kill. And therefore, and there is not much of accountability that is demanded of these people now. It is a free environment. They can do anything. And because we have to maintain social distance, we are also required to maintain social distance from asking issues to do with accountability. Because we cannot congregate, we cannot demonstrate, we cannot do anything. So, we Kenyans are left on our own. But again, it is also a wake-up call to us as Kenyans that the leadership needs to fix the mess or the problems that we are faced with as Kenyans. Like most of the prominent or rich people in this country have always sought medical attention in India and in many other states. But as it is at the moment, if you have COVID-19, there is a lockdown. You cannot fly to India. You cannot go to Italy. We really need to fix our health system right here, so that both of us, regardless of class, whether you got money or you do not have money, you can access medical attention right here at home. Thank you very much.
Interesting.
Yes,
interesting.
Patrick.
If I come to you, maybe Abok, Graph is saying, actually, we need 3 daily press briefing. One is COVID-19, the second one is floods, and the third one, police brutality. Anyway, this is interesting. But anyway, do we even have to talk about police brutality right now, and even how we manage floods? But anyway, Abok, you can proceed.
Yes, my friend Dennis has talked generally, but I just want to go back to the point where I said we are not even sure of the number of deaths. It's very interesting in Kenya to understand that this particular disease, it's only testing positive for those who have been collected by the government. This disease is only killing those who have been collected by the government. And this disease, the people who are recovering are people who have been collected by the government. If it were that serious the way the government would want to make it look like, then we would even be collecting bodies even from easily that these people have died out of COVID-19 or whichever slum that there is a huge widespread of the disease. But you find that those who are, if it is a honest case, then we should have those who have died out of government centers and those who have been collected and quarantined or isolated and have died out of these. So you find that we only find this particular information from one source, and this source should have balanced the whole equation by saying that we are overstretched. We are not able to collect everyone, but out of this, we have even collected the bodies of people who have died, because since 13th of March is a long period of time. If somebody was, or some people were infected, then others would still succumb to the same. Does it mean that those who are being collected by the government are the ones who have got underlying conditions and they are the ones who are being killed by this particular disease? Anyway, it is an enterprise. There is a very, very limited use of data in relation to this. Most probably it's used towards making the government itself during this particular time. Yeah, that is what I wanted to add.
Interesting. So I want to bring Alphonse. You know, in Kenya, we have been talking about maybe those people who live, let's call them middle class, but I know you don't, I don't know if you are the same person who says Kenya does not have middle class. But anyway, having middle class in this country, we haven't maybe having a quality of life. So maybe, and also I thought this COVID-19 is a wake-up call for maybe us to have a quality of life where we will actually have those things that we deem to say they are human rights provided to us, like health. So going forward, how do we actually ensure that we can actually have quality of life in this country?
Let me start with the issue. I'm becoming a Wekesa today. I'm getting behind by an idea or two. The issue of COVID-19, cholera, and floods. Of course, Graph Elvis talks of police brutality as well. But I will give yesterday, but one. COVID-19, we had a total reported cases to be 737, and we're talking of reported cases by the government, of which 40 people had already died.
Oh.
Then we also had 522
Yeah, I'm online, but I'm showing everyone food.
We had 522 reported cholera cases in the country, 13 deaths out of that. Then we had 38,980 reported displaced people due to floods. 38,000. Yeah, that is more than 100, almost close to 100 times the number of cholera, and literally 50 times the COVID cases so far reported by that time, yesterday but one. So 38,980 people who had been displaced. And these are official figures, minus a few other people who were displaced, but then friends and other people came on board and they were not counted. And out of that, 237 were dead due to floods. Now, why are we overpossessed by COVID? Yeah. Why are we possessed by, what is COVID? Yeah. Remember in this show, I raised an issue of economics of pandemics. That whenever we have a pandemic, whenever we have an epidemic, whenever we have an outbreak of a disease, there is usually the winners and the losers. And there are those who this pandemic came so that they can get to be in the list of billionaires. So we must arise. In fact, if possible, why can't we go and die on the street? So that, because why 38,000 people should not matter to us, and 737 cases looks like it's the whole world for us. I don't understand. Yeah, we relate with the flood cases because we can see, we know, we identify. It is real,
Cindy,
it's verifiable.
can you give me the charger, phone charger there, please?
But we can't identify with COVID as much as they want us to. And even though we appreciate that the COVID being highly infectious disease, from the fact that it's the mode of transmission and the rate of and the rate at which it has closed the world.
I'm online, so don't come too close.
Is there someone working so hard so that what we were sharing about the numbers will translate into how much we need to get, and that how much we cannot translate to? I want to give an example. In this country, this week, I know of some health officials purportedly who are colluding with some police officers, and in that collusion, they wanted to get to arrest some 200 people, so that that number of 200 can be kept somewhere, so that some accountability can come on board of some finances. We must get tired of this. Yeah. So we were taken for granted. Now, I think to me, that's where we are. Middle class, let me assume they are there. If middle class is in our country, then we'll have known them by the rate at which they have the knowledge and how they disseminate or use that knowledge, leave alone financial resources. But most of these things, they are not aware. So what makes the middle class? I have no idea. Because middle class might decide to be a bit reluctant, but at least knowledgeable. But that is not what I'm seeing in my case. So for practical and realistic purposes, I doubt if we have a substantive middle class in our country that can make impact. But we have poor people who have a mirage of being in the middle class.
Thank you. I'm going to take you just backstage for a minute. I'm bringing Monda, and then I'll be bringing you back. I think if that will be fine. All right. Okay. Good. So let me. There's a quick. There was someone asking about the link. I've shared the link. So again, on the comment box, you can get it. Now I will come to our lady in Europe, but before that, I want to come to Kevin. Kevin. Maybe from the data, I don't know if your data can be able to differentiate between middle class and those who are not middle class. We have middle class.
I don't know if we have middle class or not. But that data would not be coming from the health department if we have middle class or not. So yeah, sorry about that.
Interesting. So, right. So maybe our sister from Europe, yeah?
Yes.
We want to revisit. We want first of all, how are you? How are you coping?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. I'm very, very well.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, maybe now I want to bring back also Alphonse, but I want you now to tell us, how do we move from the global north to the global south? Can you give us this perspective?
Okay. Now, first of all, I'm really sorry. I was queuing when I was watching this discussion while queuing for food. I decided I was going to get some takeaway for my family today. So I was out there queuing by a restaurant and watching the lovely discussion. So thank you guys for being here. Now, I think the issue that we've got, the main issue that we've got as a continent or as countries grouped together as Global South. The idea of Global South is such a new terminology, Global South and Global North. Now, of course, we know that countries termed as the Global North are more industrialized countries. And of course, less industrialized countries, developing countries are all piled in a group called the Global South. Now, it's all about who owns the means of production. And of course, we've talked about, Alphonse has mentioned the idea of American Empire, American and British Empire, controlling the world. The world is basically In fact, the main empire controlling the world right now, in practice, is actually America. If you go, it doesn't matter where in the world you are, you will see elements of Americanization everywhere. All right. So that empire has come in right at the back of British Empire, having literally obliterated, global cultures, completely transformed and changed our ways of doing things, and made us as British as possible, but not quite. I have to say not quite, because as long as you don't have the color of their skin, it does not matter how much puppetry or how much mimicry you engage yourself in, you will never be good enough. All right, you will never be good enough. So for that reason, of course, we know the drive towards colonization, the drive, all those anthropological drives at the fin de siècle, at the end of the 19th century, actually the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century. So we know that the anthropologists and coming alongside missionaries, and with this conviction, all right, to change the heathens, okay, to take us away from our ways that were deemed backward, and of course we were being saved. We were stuck in a place of sin, okay, and that was the way that they did from Europe. I'm talking right now from the center of the British Empire. Okay, the headquarters of the British Empire. I'm talking from London right now. This is British Empire HQ. So what they did was to maintain patriotism at home. They gave the picture of the heathens of the world, dying, all right, killing each other, stuck in places that they needed saving. I mean, the drive had to be as convincing as possible for British people at home. So they used every tactic. I mean, this actually made a huge part of my studies about 13 years ago, my master's studies, and the way that they published our should I say animalistic or animal-like nature on every kind of advertising that they could find, all right? Whether it was a matchbox or it was a soap, okay? The soap packaging was all pictures of Africans, all right? Really needing saving. And this was the drive towards colonization. And we know very well that that drive was all for industry, okay, to help Britain achieve its industrial or capitalist goal, all right? Now, the problem we have, which Alphonse has already talked about, is that we can never be saved from these people. We are stuck with them, all right? And the thing is that the way that colonization came in, it came in as a wholesale reform, cultural reform, wholesale cultural reform, complete cultural turnaround, okay? So there is really very little of ourselves that is actually left with us as Africans. We may not be educated, we may not be, doing all those blue collar jobs and all that, but to find us, I mean, our ways, somehow we've forgotten how we were before the colonizer arrived. We've completely forgotten. We've been so transformed that we actually, most of the time, we are just confused. We don't know what we're talking about. Okay, we are saying polygamy is bad. Why is polygamy bad? We don't understand. We say things like, oh, it's actually bad to, adultery is bad. We are basing all our justifications on a foreign theory, a foreign idea that we don't know when the Bible began and the Bible stopped. We don't know. We are so lost, okay, in our understanding of our own selves. Now, to the idea of global South and global North, and how we as a people, especially young people, can start the drive towards bringing back a means of, bringing back a sense of ownership of our own destinies. I believe that the means of production, because what these people did, they gave us the paper, the independence. However, they made sure that they maintained the means of production, because for you to be industrialized, you need the human capital. Now, that, first of all, was completely depleted through the transatlantic slave trade. So Africa suffered tremendously from that, those many years of taking people from the continent and selling them overseas as slaves. Now, we've suffered from that huge depletion of our human capital. Now, you need the human capital. Africa has suffered from that and continues to suffer because people like us, we find ourselves in the West, okay? Now, through no means, through no fault of our own, we also want those opportunities that everyone is coming for. And that also goes back to the colonizing effect, okay? The Europeanist idea of what is progressive, okay? So it all comes back to the idea of colonization. Now, you need the human capital, you need the raw materials, and you need also the means of production. Now, what we have, we may have the human capital, we may have access to raw materials. However, the person who still has the means of production is not in Africa. That person is in Washington and that person is in London. Okay, the person who can actually make sure that we have the correct equipment to mine or the correct equipment to produce is not living in Africa. So we need to bring the means of production back in Africa. So the only way that we can actually help in our small ways is to increase the idea of industry, to production. We need to really push the idea of producing things in Africa. That's basically all I can say. We know how the IMF, how we are still colonized through the IMF and WHO and even NATO. We are still colonized by this big organization. I mean, we are colonized by the West through all these systems, okay, that they have devised perfectly to keep us hostage. However, the main thing that we as people of Africa can do today is just to increase our means of, to try and take ownership of means of production. Produce, wow. We need to manufacture. We need to manufacture, guys. That's all I can say. Sorry.
Wow, crazy. Now, I can see now you are even the young person we are talking about. Yeah.
No. I'm 43 years old. I'm not young enough, but you guys are much younger, so you need to push it.
So Atieno, she's saying she's really agreeing with, but I'm actually embarrassed because she's saying she's enjoying your Queen's accent.
Oh gosh, I was colonized. Tell her I was thoroughly colonized. Yeah. So I don't know who can agree or disagree with me, but I believe 100%, because the main issue we have, the reason why we remain captives of the West is that one thing, and also the markets. We know we are living in a neoliberal society where the markets control everything. All right. So you will produce your coffee in Africa or Kenya, but then the person who is going to access the market is not you. Okay. And also, the access to the market is mainly controlled by those with more money. So it's such a complex. Neoliberalism, for instance, as a system, as a new system under capitalism, I think it's a very new capitalist system where those who don't know what neoliberalism is, it's where basically states, countries leave everything to the markets. Countries, even all the way to education systems, to medical systems, are all controlled by the markets. Okay, so all about privatization. In Britain, for instance, the person who led us to that, what we call, I don't know what kind of a hole I'd call it, but it is a terrible place that we were led into. Sorry, I wasn't in Britain then. It was Margaret Thatcher privatizing every single thing and destroying the idea, the socialist way that was initially there. All right. So therefore, if it is schooling, someone else will get the tender for schooling. If it is medical provision, someone else gets it. So it is all up there in the markets. Whoever has the power, the bargaining power, grabs it. And that's why we have a lot of tax relief for very wealthy people like Amazon, for instance. How much tax that Amazon pay? These people are the ones keeping us behind in terms of making sure money comes back to those people who actually need it, the less able. So you find that the richer people get more money because they get the tax relief. They've got more access to markets. Now, our coffee will not be seen as good coffee because we've got the means of production in Africa. We've produced it ourselves. Why is cocoa leaving Africa and being brought to Belgium to come back as chocolate? Why do we buy cocoa as chocolate from the shops? Means of production, guys. The person with means of production is not in Africa. That's the problem that we've got. We need to work on this. That's the main thing we need to sort out. Means of production. Thank you, guys.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm actually, Ruth is saying she's in the US. So she's saying she took a feminist theory class. One of the issues that came up is the fact that a lot of research from the Global South is conducted by researchers from Global North.
There you go.
That seems to shape continue to shape our realities in Africa.
Yes.
So I agree with you.
Yes, I like that because one thing, I went to a very wonderful university, a prestigious University College London. It's one of my biggest prides and joys. Now, the one thing that we were taught at the UCL was the idea, the theories that I learned at UCL, dependency theory. Those in social sciences will know what I'm talking about. There's that huge dependency that we cannot seem to escape from. I don't remember the other theories, but it's a while. But yes, so that dependency is a huge thing. We need to try. I don't know how we can do it, but because even if you are going to implement, because the way that I run my charity, I try to let the people within my charity have control of what of their own destinies and what they're doing. But then if you think about it again, the person who will have to implement all these theories and ideas that you've been taught at university will still be that will still be somebody. I'm talking about ideas from Freirianism, Paulo Freire, and and the idea of empowering communities by engaging them fully in their own creating their own destinies. The complex thing that we've got there is that the person who will have to go and implement this idea will still be somebody from a more elite background. So it's, even though of course it's the global north coming down to do the research in the global south, it's really, I don't know how well we can do it. I don't know how we can turn that around, because at the end of the day, somebody with know-how will have to come down and do the work. I don't know. Maybe someone can chip in on that. I don't know. Yeah.
Monda, let me ask Monda this. Monda, you hear what is now our role as young people driving this narrative going forward? Why can't we actually do what we are calling now, what Jackie is talking about? We have to talking about manufacturing and producing in Africa.
Yeah.
Wow. I think I've learned a lot from Jackie. Thank you. And
Thank you.
I know at some point, you were wondering if there's somebody who is somehow agreeing with what you're saying. There's one key statement that you said, that, Africa should take charge of their destiny. We should define ourselves, and we should, everything that we do as Africans, we should focus to just, tailoring it to fit the African situation, the African culture, and the needs for Africa. Because, mostly you'll find that as far as, we're in a global village, there is that diversity also. What I need as an African, for me to define the term progress or development might be a little bit different. I have taken time, for example, to look at the Asians, and I really admire them quite a lot. What the Asians have done, number one, they have maintained their culture over a long period of time. For example, the Indians were colonized just like Kenyans, but the Indians have always maintained their culture. Today, if you cannot speak English, then you are a fool. If you don't have a relative living in the United States or living in Europe, then it means you don't have focus. If you don't have a dream to go to some universities in the West or somewhere, then it means you have not achieved. That's how we define success in Africa. But when you visit most of the Soviet countries, for example, I have been there for quite some time. Right now, as I speak, I'm in Russia, but I've had an advantage of visiting the former Soviet countries. And I have interacted with them, and I have seen them, how they pick their pieces from way back in 1990. And at this moment, they're in the trajectory of development. You saw, for example, how the Ukrainians fought for their space. We have seen the Georgians, how they fought for this, the story of the former Yugoslavia. And still you go down to the Central Asia. One thing you're gonna realize when you go to Uzbekistan, for example, 90% of the citizens in Uzbekistan, they understand Russian. But you go there as a foreigner and you speak to those guys, in Russian, they will say, hey, this is Uzbek. Can't you speak Uzbek? You go to Ukraine, you speak to Ukrainians in Russian, they understand and they will tell you, okay, well, can't you learn Ukrainian? But, in Africa, I have also had a privilege of visiting some Francophone countries and Anglophone countries. One thing, especially in the Francophone countries, the more you speak French, the lighter skin you look, the closer you become closer to a Frenchman. That's why historically, when you see these great musicians from, the Lumba musicians, at some point they lived in Paris, they retired in Paris, they invested in Paris. They did not inspire the people back at home to grow. Let's look at Kenya and other countries, for example. How many of our brothers and sisters we have, when they go to the United States, when they come back, they want to speak to us in an accent. Or instead of discussing Kenyan problems, they will always talk about Africa, in Africa. But they even lose their identity along the process. So that's where we are. Number one, the greatest problem in Africa, we are in an identity crisis. We have been colonized intellectually. We have lost our culture. So for me, number one, and strongly, I really believe that a culture is a very strong aspect that can be able to build patriotism. Once you have patriotism as a citizen, you get to invest in your country, you get to love your country. Why do we have, for example, the leadership in Africa? 90% or 100% of the leadership, people who hold positions, they have taken their money in the tax havens. Why do we have guys looting money from our countries and they take that money to Switzerland? Why do they take their money to why do they take the money to France? Why do people take money to all the Western countries? Why do people strike serious contracts? For example, you guys, we've been facing COVID-19 crisis, and we realized that Kenyans can invent. When it was very hard to get some things from out there, that's when people started making masks. I never knew that Kenyans can make a mask. But before that, we even had toothpicks in supermarkets imported. So this is what we are. We don't love our country. We don't like our identity. We don't like our culture. And we are out to make quick money. The richer you become, you go invest out there. You leave you take your kids, abroad. You keep them there. You stay at home. You keep on looting. I have interacted with quite a number of families whose parents are quite influential. Sometimes when you're in Europe, you meet these guys. and you happen to talk. And I remember last year I met this lady, and she said, you know, there was an attempted coup in our country, and we had to be moved to Europe. Our family had to be moved to Europe for 6 months while they left their father back home in Africa, you know, to observe the situation from Europe. So ideally, what the Africans were the enemies of ourselves. Even when we want to define the middle class, the high income class, and the low income class, we want to pick a definition from the United States. We want to look at that quality of life, and then we just transfer it back to the village. Okay. We don't want to localize this, and we understand it from our local perspective. That's what I have to say.
Shall I say something very quickly?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. Now, you've spoken about India, and I felt sad because India, I don't think there's any country that was colonized by the British that suffered more than India. I don't think so. And the suffering was not just in human loss and the depletion of natural resources, which, by the way, India built Britain. There's something called the East India Company that was established by the British. It was actually stolen from the Dutch and by the British. Of course, the British stole. Sorry for any British person watching. I know I'm a British person, but I'm also an African. But the thing is, they are the masters of theft in terms of kind of theft of ideas. You know, most of the things that they've patented, they actually stole quite a lot of them. But never mind. Right from the from football, you know, football is now seen as a British thing, but it's really not. It comes all the way from Spain, I believe. So basically, what I wanted to tell you about India is that India suffered tremendously. Now, the new imperialism, what we've got right now, we're living under what we call a new imperialism. Now, new imperialism, whether it is the Russian Empire, you've spoken about some former Soviet states. Now, I did a case study of Tajikistan, which is a former Soviet state, and they are really, they're stuck in that state of wishing that the former Soviet Union was still there. They don't know why they got independence. So it's really hard for any country to go through some kind of colonization and remain solid. So you are talking of Asian. I think maybe you meant about the Far Eastern nations, but South Asia, for instance, countries in the, much south of the Asian peninsula, they suffer tremendously from colonization. But what they have that many countries don't have is religion as a source of identity. So I think what you're looking at, perhaps in India, for instance, is religious identity rather than a cultural identity. So in terms of traditional cultural identity, India suffered tremendously. So be very careful not to see maybe language, for instance, because we know the first tool in colonization is, the idea that, language. My language is the first tool. The idea that you speaking your own mother tongue is not civilized. So. Guys, we are all the new imperialism. There is no nation that has been left out, that has not, unless it is a group of people living deep in the Amazon. Maybe that group of people may be spared. However, in terms of new imperial empires right now, the new empires, American, British still dying out a lot, but of course the damage is done. But then American, in terms of the former Soviet Union, the Russian Empire, what it did for all those states that were former whatever, you don't escape from it. You just now have to find a new way. You cannot go back. You have to find a new way of forming a new identity for yourself that will actually celebrate elements of your identity while also exploiting the things that you've gotten from this colonize. I know it's really hard for us to agree that, you know, that there are some elements of colonization that we use now to benefit ourselves. But, you know, it is now time for us to find a way of, I mean, colonization is terrible. It's terrible, terrible. You can never see anything good about it. However, we can use elements of it to actually, you know, be at the table, decision making, globalization, for instance. How is globalization helping us as Kenyans and as Africans? We need to find out how we can make globalization work for us, because as it stands now, the main beneficiaries of globalization are the global north. They are benefiting tremendously. They've got call centers all around the global south. They've got industry. I mean, they've got lots of things happening in the global south. How are we benefiting from globalization, guys? So those are the questions that we need to ask. Okay, great. We need to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are the really amazing, good questions. But anyway, Alphonse, you know, there's the question is, are we in ransom right now? But anyway,
I'm sorry, I had not finished my doing my
sorry, Mada, sorry. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Continue.
Okay. Well, to some extent, okay, I agree with what you've just added, Jackie. But I have seen, for example, you know, Germany and Netherlands, they share a border.
Yes.
And you realize that those citizens along the border, they both speak Germany and
Dutch.
And Dutch. Mm-hmm. But anytime you cross to the other side, even Germany, they speak Dutch to Germany. That's when you realize how much they defend their identity.
Yes.
As selfish. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, the same thing when you cross to Netherlands and they speak some German, you will see how much they don't feel happy about it. Mm-hmm. That's why, for example, we have very small micronations. I call them micronations in terms of, not economically, but in terms of the landmass. That's why we have them existing in Europe, because everybody has an identity that they are dying hard to protect. Mm-hmm. You remember even last year we had one region of Spain that wanted to secede. It's because of that identity that they have been keeping over time. So all we are trying to ask, we are not saying that we're going to bury our head in the sand and then we ignore or we don't look at what is happening out there. What I'm saying is we need a special identity as Africa. Is there something that is unique with us? Because even the culture, I'm telling you, and I can tell you this one for free. The British, for example, these guys are not mining anything when we want to talk about the natural resources. Right now, they're eating from the culture that they strongly, sold into the world, and everybody thinks British is cool. Watching the Premier League, it's cool. Even when we have a very strong Premier League in Italy or in Spain, everybody talks about the English Premier League. Everybody, every Chinese who is making billions wants to go and buy a home in London.
Yes.
Everybody, everything. That's why we talk about for London being, a financial. We call it a financial capital, right? Yes, that's what makes it. But realistically, when you want to look at in terms of natural resources, what they have, you might not find a lot. When you go to most of their universities, one of the leading universities in the UK, and I thank God that you'll be there, you realize that almost 60% heads of the departments, they're foreigners. They're headed by foreigners. They got guys from China. They got guys from Singapore. They got guys from Africa. They're heading very critical departments within those universities. They're taking the workforce, they're putting them in the country, and that's what makes it great. And everybody in the world appreciates the British culture. And anybody, for example, right now, we just had Kenyans, Africans stuck in China. I'm telling you, they can stay there even for 30 years, but nobody will ever apply to be a Chinese citizen. Today, if somebody had an opportunity to stay in the UK even for 2 years, you would see this person will be struggling to be a UK citizen. And guess what they take in? we saw the case of Syria refugees. And I don't know if you followed critically what happened. Immediately, we had the refugees when we had the Syria crisis. Germany and UK, they took the first group of refugees. Do you know the first group of refugees? These are professionals. These are rich guys who were running out of the country immediately the crisis started. And they closed their borders immediately after that.
Yeah.
So what remained here, these other guys who are being sent away, they're those poor guys who might not be able to contribute so much to a country. If you look at what Germany hosted and what Britain hosted, they're those guys, the top cream in a society. Why does everybody want to walk all the way from Syria, past Turkey, go to France, all the way to the UK? Why would the refugees? You have seen it. They want to walk through Europe all the way to the UK.
They all want to get
it's
to
because
the UK.
of
Yes.
history. Now, I challenge you, or I maybe next time you try and visit some of these francophone countries. Those guys, they lost their identity. They do not even have. You go, for example, in Senegal. Those guys, they can hardly speak their local dialect. They do not have even a national language. And then you tell them that you are from East Africa. They see East Africa as a Europe. Because at least we have an identity. We have something we can pride in. So, the whole concept of globalization, it's about keeping your identity first and then trying to see how you can benefit from what is going up there. I think that's my perception. I will add something later. Maybe I should just give a chance to somebody, then I'll come in.
Thank you.
As time goes by.
Thank you, Monda.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a very interesting perspective. Now I want Alphonse to to weigh in on this. This is very.
This is fire.
Before you do it,
Yeah.
you actually address. Ruth also, she's in the US. She's also saying the same one Jackie was addressing. She's saying, how should we define ourselves when we are stuck trying to rectify the misconception that have already been told about us? Alphonse.
First of all, don't change anybody in the world. Change yourself. So if you can't change yourself, forget about these other stories. Remember, yesterday when we were speaking, I was giving Monda stories about what I have done, what I'm doing, what I've gone through, and he was giving me the stories of, let's be real, on the ground, this is how things are. Now, I don't want to be in the air and talk about the ground. If I have the wings to fly, I go fly and talk about the air. If I'm underground, I talk about what happens there. Now, change yourself first, then share your experience. What you believe in, if you are it, people will believe you. So to me, that's the starting point. Today it's a good day for me. This is my staff. This is my area. But let me make it light a bit. Start with Jackie. Jackie, are you a teacher of English? Or
So, I am a teacher of English.
Yes, and do you teach?
Somewhere along the way, I became a social scientist as well. So
Okay. No, I'm asking this for the sake of Patrick. Do you teach English literature or you teach literature in English?
Lit. And English literature or not literature in English. English.
So you are telling me literature English or English literature? So
Are those two different? Is the same? Are those or they're synonymous?
I think they're synonymous. I think it's just all semantics.
Yeah, language is semantics. So if anyway, now back to our topic. There's a gentleman in history who was born in New York in 1912. His name is Milton Friedman. He was a renowned economist who changed the world to date. In 1953, he came up with some theories, economic theories. And part of those theories, he came up with some policies and advocated for them. And his theories were looking at what we call a consumption state. Yeah, and then he built his literature around there, then came up with things like permanent income, not just what we call current income. And he gave a direction for the US. If the US wanted to be the superpower and take the power from the hands of USSR, then this was just after the Second World War, which ended in 1945, and the world was collecting its pieces. Now, Friedman is the one who came up with the things that you talked about, Jackie, about the market forces. Yes, and his policies were clear, so they were tested in smaller bits, and it is these theories that led to development of institutions that collect taxes in countries. And it became a requirement for you to be supported by the global south, global north. You must have an institution that collects taxes. So it is the result of that now led to development of institutions that we have in the country today, such as in Kenya we have KRA, but every country has its equivalent. By the way, we operated in the past without these, and there was no bad economy. Yes, so they also came with other forms and said, now, you see, before the support was more of grants, but now it was to be restructured so that can we have loans that are repaid, given with conditions, so that you tighten your hands and control of these third world countries. Now, there is a gentleman by the name Ronald Reagan in the US who became president. And also we had another lady by the name Margaret Thatcher in the UK who became prime minister. Now, the combination of these two made Friedman's dream to become a reality. And they rolled out in the entire globe what was called structural adjustment programs in 1979, 1980, 81 going forward. And the world has never remained the same.
True.
They have tightened the grip on how they control us to date. South Americans were really hard hit by these economic policies. Africa was the second one. Southeast Asia became the third. But the revolt became so serious in Latin America. And because of that noise and cry, they changed the policy and a few things, but the name changed from structural adjustment programs, which commonly known as SAPs, became Washington Consensus. Now, Washington Consensus now just reduced these policies and made them into 10 economic policies that were to be used at a macro level. And some of the institutions that were developed earlier due to Friedman's policies and theories was the central bank or the reserve bank. So in a country, they either have reserve bank or central bank. They're equivalent. Now, these are the owners and the ones that keep this type of policies. They keep the trade policies, they keep the fiscal and monetary policies. So every time a country has a bilateral or they have multilateral trade agreements, the custodian of these agreements is the central bank or equivalent, such as Reserve Bank in some countries. Now, it is out of these that they have tightened the grip. In some of those, you find that there is a non-disclosure clauses that if the country makes this known to the public and they lose the projected profitability, then they have to repay that before the time elapses. And that's why countries like Zimbabwe had to suffer a lot when they decided to do the same. So it is a very interesting direction that is so deeply rooted in our system today that even if you or me became president, as radical as we may assume we are, we still find that our hands are extremely tied if we were to make our people continue living normally or with minimum disruption. Yeah, so I think it's a discussion I would love us to maybe itemize and look into deeply one by one. But we must be ready to fight the part we can fight and make some level of progress towards independence. And part of this is when we were colonized, we had our own land, not bought and not sold. But it was then taken away by the colonizers. When they left it, one, with a price. Second, for them to return it to us, they will have to pay. And because we didn't have the money, they had to lend us the money. Then we pay them that money. Then we own that land. And because we could not own the entire one that they were having and they taken from us, that's why they still own large estates to date in our own country with different dynamics of business and laws around businesses and companies. So that is a very, very heavy thing. So I hope, Patrick, you'll bring a discussion around this so that we look at this matter production line and how we need to work on owning production. It is not about having factories. Why will somebody control the world by printing money in the name of a dollar? And they make the money look like it's more valuable than the gold, the platinum, the maize that we have. Why can't we then say that instead of us having the exchange rate, the universal exchange being done through dollars or any other currency they have for that matter, because the dollar is mainly for the US, which is the main currency in the world. Why can't we say that the gold becomes the main currency or the oil? Yeah, because those are the things we have a bargaining power when you go to the natural resources. Yeah, and there's something they call rent thinking, and such things are deep. So I love the conversation, but the means of production is what we need to discuss in depth so that we are
I agree.
Yeah, means of production, and it is not it's not an idea that is basic. It is deep in terms of an idea. It's not about just owning a factory. It's a lot more than owning a factory. So we need more than that. So I agree. Let me go to this direction and then finish. You will never have an identity if you can't even speak your own language. And I
agree. Thank you for free. Thank you very much.
Why can't we start this show, even if not every day, some days, to speak Kiswahili here? Why were people, all of us have Kiswahili qualifications if they are formal, if you didn't have it informally? Why are we insisting that we must speak English for us to have a conversation? I am a lawyer. Why should I be so much mad being a lawyer? So that I can't speak my lawyer. I must, at least, if I want to respect every Kenyan who can speak more than one local language, but make it a step to know that we must be happy for you to be a Kisi, must be happy for you to be a Luo, for you to be a Kikuyu. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
Alphonse, so I agree with you. We are going to bring that topic about production, and we will look into specifics. The key things, we'll do that. Now,
Patrick, there's something we're doing here. Yeah. You know, you talked and I kept quiet a bit, so I also thought I should unleash this side of the story. I want to finish this side of the story by saying there's something in business we call rent seeking. Now, rent seeking is the right word, and it has a very bad connotation for those who understand the language, because when you are a rent seeker, we will not take it kindly. However, in business terms, we will say that you are adding value. So somebody who does advertisement is earning more than somebody who does the production of that specific commodity. Now, if the farmer is farming and doing all the work to ensure that we have the produce, and somebody goes to advertise that produce, we attach more value to the advertisement than we attach it to the production. And I think that is very wrong. We must change that line. That person is adding the least of the value. The other one is doing a lot more of the work, and we should appreciate that work, not in the inverse manner, because the global north has made us feel like we must appreciate the advertiser more than we appreciate the farmer. Yeah. Now, I want to give an example. I want to use one example, and then I close it at that. And I want to use oil. Shell is a company. I think Shell should be a US company.
Yes, it is.
And or Total, which is a French company. They are in the oil business. Now, Shell has made it in that if you want to have a Shell petrol station in Kenya today, you must deposit, let's say, 10 million with them so that you show that you have the capacity. This 10 million, you have worked for it for a longer period of time in your life, or have gotten it with a huge sweat. Now, once you get the 10 million, that is the deposit, security deposit, which they will use for other trade. Then now you must have the capacity to buy the fuel. But you can only buy the fuel from Vivo Energy. So you cannot have another source, even if you get a better source with cheaper prices. Now, Vivo is also controlled by Shell. Now, Vivo Energy does not own trucks. The truck people are also people who have been given the contract and they have to purchase the trucks, maintain the trucks, and the only thing that Shell has is their name on their petrol station, and Vivo has is the Shell name on the trucks. But guess who earns the highest amount of money when you have sold that oil? It is not the
Shell.
oil producer. It is not the oil transporter. It's not the one who is selling the oil. It is Shell who only has their brand name. That must be addressed. We must be radical about it. So I don't want to enter into my gear of activism, but that is my belief, that we must address the issues the way they are. So
Yes, I agree.
yeah. Thank you so much, Tim. I'm happy that today we started the right direction.
Okay, that's quite interesting, and actually, that's what China is doing. Because what China does, number one, if you wanna open a company in China, you have to partner with a Chinese, and a Chinese must be the majority shareholder at 51%. So what they did, for example, Samsung, or maybe these electronics, you go there, you partner with a Chinese, you're producing a phone. Samsung goes to China, they have partnered with the Chinese, they're producing a phone. At that time, the Chinese are learning the skills. And then what the Chinese government does, they will fund a local investor, a Chinese, and they pump a lot of money to that local investment. Then they start producing the same product, but a little bit different. They just change the brand name at a cheaper cost. So as it goes on, you realize that most citizens or most people, they will start buying a cheaper product, of course, which is relatively of a good quality. And after 5 years or so, you realize that, for example, Samsung is closing shop in China because they cannot be able to compete with the local company that just came up recently and is supported with the government and is given some tax reliefs and so on. That's exactly what they're doing, and that's how they have grown their manufacturing.
Yeah, interesting. So,
Wow.
Monda. We get to the. I want to bring Nyaribo first, and Nyaribo, I want you to address this question from Brian. Brian is saying, young people should be at the forefront of global change and innovation and empowerment. They can be key agents of development and peace. However, we are left out to fend for ourselves. Nyaribo, are our young people left to fend for themselves? Nyaribo? All right, Nyaribo, are you there? Okay, can you try to unmute your mic from your side, Nyaribo? Musa? Or he froze? Okay, he's frozen, eh? All right.
He's frozen.
It's frozen. All right. So let me come to Jackie. Jackie, now this is a concern. This is a young person speaking. He says young people are left to fend for themselves. They are not being empowered or even molded or even shown these ways. They don't have the right, maybe, role models. So are maybe the old failing the young people, when young people, if they can maybe be molded to the right direction, they can actually pick the pieces. What's the point?
Can you read the question again? Just read it again. Young people.
So he's saying young people should be at the forefront of global change and innovation and empowerment. They can be agents for development and peace. However, we are left out to fend for ourselves. So the question is, are young people left out in this landscape?
Okay, so first of all, so they want to be at the forefront of change, for global change and innovation, and they feel that they've been left to fend for themselves?
Yes.
Okay. I think to some extent that is actually false, and I'm going to say why I believe it's false. Now, the way that our system, our Kenyan system runs today. Sorry, I may have lived away for about 20 years, but then, I mean, going to 20 years. But then the thing is, I partly live in Kenya, so I know that there is some kind of lethargy when it comes to being physically engaged with what's happening with our country. Young people, older people, everybody, people tend to be less involved and less engaged with issues that actually affect them. The last election, I was at home and I was really shocked. I decided, because there was news that there could be some violence, so I decided to go be in the village and really be quiet in the village to avoid any kind of fracas if it was to occur. The entire village did not go out to vote. Can you believe it? The neighbor did not vote. The other neighbor did not. People are not bothered about what's happening to their own country. There is no participation, no civic participation from most people in our country. And the problem that we have, young people want to be at the forefront of global change and innovation. They have to create those opportunities by themselves. We've seen right in this show of yours, Patrick, we've seen young people coming here and young people talking about brilliant ideas, okay? Things that people like myself, when I was in my 30s, I mean, 20s, 30s, I may never have come up with because I was busy having children. Sorry. Yeah. But then the thing is, so you guys are actually making use of the little opportunity that you've got to try and, I mean, be active participants in any form of change that there may be. Now, I'll also give it another side as well, that there is also really little room for maneuver for a young person in Kenya right now, because not many young people, I mean, are aware actually that I mean, the reason why they cannot really go up there and push for change is because they are living under some kind of authoritarian state. I mean, there is no active political kind of reforms of any kind of anything that is really active, because what the ruling party has done, they've actually killed the opposition completely, or rather bought the opposition with money. The opposition leader has been given a big job, so he's now quiet. And there's this movement to kind of build bridges, and everyone is now being encouraged to be quiet. Monda can agree with me that Russia is trying to do the exact same thing by killing the opposition and completely killing it. Now, guys, there is one thing. On one hand, young people can create their own opportunities. They can be more vocal about things that affect them. On the other hand, their hands are tied because they are living under a system that is more authoritarian than democratic. So there is really little room for maneuver. That's all I can say. But what I can tell young people right now is create those opportunities yourself. Go out there, create those opportunities. Don't wait for somebody to come there and create an opportunity for you. Go out there, create the opportunities. Amazing. Find the right people that you can connect with that can help you get to where you need to go.
Amazing. I want to bring Kevin before I go to Monda. Kevin, maybe I want to also, since you are a young person doing great things in Kenya, are young people left behind?
Hi, Patrick. I really don't know the exact answer to this, but I would like to think that from my own perspective, young people have not been left behind. At least I have not been left behind. So there are a number of ways I've seen young people coming in to, help fight the coronavirus pandemic. And I think one of the first
Patrick, can you hear? I cannot hear.
Oh, you can't hear?
No.
I can hear you.
Even me, I can hear you.
Oh dear. Okay. I mean, I can't hear Kevin at all.
Even me, I can hear him.
Oh dear. Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So I was saying that I have seen a number of ways that the young people are contributing. And I think one of the first methods that are obvious is in social media and also in apps and technology. So, for example, in the social media, currently we have two viruses going around the world right now. We have COVID-19 is a virus that is going around the world right now.
Patrick, can you let me know what he said? I cannot hear him.
But at the same time,
no.
Yeah.
No.
I'm
So
sorry. I'll explain what he's saying after he finishes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we have COVID-19 is a virus that is spreading around the world, but alongside COVID-19, we also have fake news, which is also spreading around the world right now. And there is one vaccine that we immediately have in our disposal as youth, which is good information. So if we can spread the good information through social media and all those apps that we have out there, that is a good way that the youth can contribute. And I think they are already contributing to that because the old generation are not active on social media as much as the youth are. And we have also seen the youths being able to innovate, for example, in Kenya. And I think we just talked about it on the show right now, that all of a sudden, Kenya is able to produce things. We are able to produce masks. We are able to produce masks. We are able to produce ventilators. We are able to innovate all of a sudden. And some people have been saying that, you know what, it's because the cartels are in quarantine. So now we have a chance as youths to make some things. Okay. So yeah, that is the second way that youths are contributing to this one right now. And the third way I'm seeing is this show we are having right now with Patrick. This is a brilliant way the youths are contributing through this broadcast. So manifest itself. And we've been engaging leaders here as well. We engaged with Jeff Kaluyu. We engaged with Mudiara just a few days ago. And I hope you'll be bringing in more leaders. We've also engaged with Mr. Washira just the other day, who is an old guy who is really tech savvy. And well, this is a platform for the youth and we brought him in. So those are all brilliant ways that I think the youth have been able to contribute to this so far.
Wow, amazing. So actually, I hope, Jackie, you heard what he said. He said he agreed with you actually. Like young people are not left behind. And he thinks young people are doing great things in the world. They are trying to share information, the right information to fight maybe COVID-19. They're even getting involved in innovation. Yeah, like maybe contributing at this time. But he's saying maybe it's because cartels are sleeping at this moment. I'm not sure about that. So yeah, so that's what Matt is saying. So young people are doing something. So they are not left behind.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Monda, maybe Monda, you can address this comment from Freddie Kenyatta. I'm assuming he's a cousin of Kenyatta, the president.
My friend, inaumiza.
So
inaumiza sana. My friend, let us be realistic. I think young people have been left behind. Nobody cares about young people in this country. That is the truth. Unfortunately, today we had our president. Our president has been notorious appointing retirees to different positions. Yet we are talking about 40% unemployment. I have all respect to retirees, and I'm not trying to undermine them. But when we have a country, an economy whereby 40% of unemployment, and probably when we want to talk about unemployment, there's unemployment and then there's underemployment. It could be over 60%. And then somebody retires from the army and then he's given an opportunity to head a parastatal. Yet there is an ambitious youth who started from a low level in a parastatal, has been faithfully serving the country, hoping that one day he might also rise to a position and give his experience. What happens? Somewhere on the way, somebody is picked from somewhere, he's given a position to head a parastatal with zero experience. we are talking about the ambassadorial jobs. Nowadays, those are positions reserved for political for political failures. Okay, so every person who has failed politically is getting an appointment, an ambassador for China. I don't know where. That's what we are seeing, my brother. So the point is, yes, youths have the energy. They can be able to work. They can be able to do. They have the capacity to do something, but they have not been afforded the opportunity.
All right.
That is the reality, and it's quite unfortunate. We have to. I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, the only time. Let me finish. The only time you hear youths are called upon to act ni wakati wa maandamano. Vijana oe! Ndio wanatoka. Ama somebody, a politician, a leader who is supposed to create policies to empower youths, anamlipa 300 shillings to keep on blogging and abusing and insulting or singing his name the whole day on social media. That is what we are facing. And do you know why it is happening? It's because of, we are facing poverty. There's the poverty levels are on the rise, and it's very unfortunate. After this COVID-19, I don't know what is going to happen to most of our countries.
Right.
Monda, you're suggesting,
Yes.
you're suggesting that I mean, the things that you've actually mentioned are
Yes.
all to do with employment, and we do know very, very well that it's a really small percentage of people in employment.
Yes.
You know, most economies, world's economies are driven by business. You know,
Yes.
small businesses. Okay, so I still believe young people can turn away from them for themselves. I still believe. I don't, because I've seen young people from my part of the world, for instance, Kisumu. I mean, they congregate and they talk politics all day in that little congregation. I mean, it is so common, and that's what I'm used to. I'm used to young people in groups talking about the big guys at the top. I mean,
My
imagine
sister-
imagine if they used that time doing something else. Imagine.
Umeongea ukweli kabisa. But
I think let me also interrupt this. I don't want to request for time. I may not get it.
yes.
If you don't have a skill, what type of job can you do without skill? Now, I have been a young person in this country. When you take a book to read, you look like, why are you reading? Don't take life that serious. When you want to go and jog to be healthy, people are wondering why you are not going to watch the ball with them. We love things to happen for us and to be done for us. Truth be told,
Yes.
there are political appointment jobs, and because they are designed so, they will remain so. The only time we are crying, if you want to have a political appointment, have political sycophancy to the people with an intention known to those people that if they win and succeed, you also will partake of the cake. But if you become a political sycophant for the sake of it, to the extent that you can even torch a house of the opponent, then that is not politics. That is stupidity. That is nonsensical. And that type of young person is the one misrepresenting me. And I don't want such a young person to be brought on board. How many young people have been given roles and they did not play it to the extent that they misrepresented young people as if we cannot perform? I am of the idea. I understand the outcry. I live with the people who want to pass exams but cannot read. I see people who want to take their children to better schools but cannot perform well in school in the lowest levels of grading, but they want to go to a better school. A parent want to go and buy a school, pay principal, so that another child who is deserving and not able financially is left out, so that their child can go in that school. And then that parent is the one that now is saying that their child cannot get an opportunity. They are used to buying the opportunities.
Thank you.
So if you bought an opportunity to become a policeman, where do you want this policeman to get the money back that they use for buying the position? They didn't come to serve the public. They came to harvest. And that's why they bought the position. But if we don't fight for the right policies, if we don't fight for the right things to be done the right way, then our cry is hypocritical.
Thank you.
Our cry is childish. Can we now grow up? You can be growing old, but you're not growing.
Thank you.
Can we grow up and do things the right way? You cannot stand on my way as a Kenyan, even if you are the president today, by doing the wrong thing. Because I know that I have a space. So give me my space, because my space does not eat up your space anyway.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, can I was saying something, and Alphonse came in strongly. It was just a small, a little comment. I just talked about, because I thought the question was about, have these young people been afforded opportunity?
Yeah.
And I talked in terms of job opportunities, the appointments. But there's also another perspective to this. Kenya is one of the countries with very expensive loans. And you realize, I don't know, Alphonse, you can advise me, or you can also come strongly in that, or you can comment on that, because we are talking about 14% interest. So if somebody wants to start a business today, or if somebody is running a business today and wants to get a loan, we have what we call 14%. And then we have these things you call M-Shwari, whose interest is even crazy. I don't know, 60%. We have, I don't know, these three things. I don't know, the Shylocks and all those. Very expensive loans. Now, let's go to what the government is giving. And actually, they're saying that these loans are very expensive because the government is also competing with the private sector, or the private sector in borrowing from the banks. So far, out of the loans we have, I think about 60%, out of the debt we have, about 60% of around maybe 55%, it's local, which means the government had borrowed locally. And if the government is borrowing locally, ideally what it means, every other finance institution is going to give money to the government because it's secure and they can be guaranteed of the returns. So, and these banks, they're going to make the loans very expensive. That's what we are facing. But when you look at some other countries, the interest rate is about 2%, 2.5%. The mortgages, about 2%. That is the reality. Now, let's come to the Youth Enterprise Fund. The process. I think, Alphonse, you can explain the process to us. It's not easy. First, there is no information out there that funds have been released to, funds are available. People do not know. And for even the few who knows, they need connections. And even after knowing connections, the paperwork that you will have to go through for you to get 50,000 for in a group of 10 young people. It is such a tedious process. So
Monda,
the reality remains.
Sorry, Monda.
Yes.
What you're telling me is the normal talk we have on the ground. But if we were to bring change, we must bring the real talk. Now, if you want 50,000 to eat, then we'll be discussing, say 50,000 for 10 people will not be enough. But if the idea that the 10 people came with is worth 50,000, then they should not complain of the 50,000 being given. Now, if you cannot take time to raise the 50,000, and you cannot take time to do the paperwork to raise the 50,000, you are the wrong people to ask for the 50,000, because either spend time to raise money slowly until you raise the 50,000, or be committed and do the paperwork to raise the 50,000. It will not take the same amount of time. Yeah, there's an opportunity. It doesn't. Anything that comes easy goes away easily. Now, those who have gotten the 50,000 as quickly as they wanted, it also left them as quickly as they didn't expect. Now,
I thought
the truth of the matter, if you wanted to do a business, you must understand the business process. So that you understand it's supposed to be registered, how much it takes, whether it's a good or a service, what does it require in permit. Yeah, and if it was that you must have money to start a business, most of us, including myself, whatever I am doing will not have started. I spent 7.5 years preparing to be a consultant of labor. Now, while doing that, I looked like a madman because I was going to work. My working hours were on average 8:15 a.m. to 5 p.m. I used to be in that office so that I can go online by 6:30. And 6:30 to 8, I was online preparing my capacity, reading, going through a lot of stuff on YouTube, on Google, downloading. Then after 5, all the way to 7:30, instead of going to the traffic and get stuck on the way, I remain in the office because the office space I could be accommodated up to that time. Then I remain in the office. I do my reading as people are stuck on the road. I was not having enough time with my family. Yeah. Now, when things start happening for me and I'm confronting situations, somebody tells me I'm lucky. It is not luck. When I'm spending maximum of 4 hours to sleep for over 15 years, that is capacity development. Now, if you are with me at that level, and then you think that I just woke up and I was lucky, it is not true. Whether you are a politician or an academician or a business person, there is a cost to pay. If you don't want to pay the cost, please keep off. That's the truth that you should tell every young person.
And Monda, I'll
Yes.
just add very quickly. I think you're speaking for the young boys, the young guys on the ground looking for quick money to eat, you know. So it's really nice that you're defending them. However, right on this forum, right here on our screen, there is this Kevin whose live show I watched a few weeks ago, where he was, and then I went to his website and then I read about what he has done right from Kisumu. Was it Kisumu Polytechnic? You know, and these are examples of young people creating opportunities for themselves. You know, guys, young people are not incapable. They should not be looking for some quick 50,000 to divide 5K between them. I mean, what's that? I mean, that's pointless. They can start a business without that 50,000 if they wanted to. Just as Alphonse said. So, guys, let's not make excuses. Let's fix our nation once and for all.
Amazing.
Okay, I agree with what you are saying, but I will still stick with my argument that the young people have not been offered an opportunity. They can find opportunities.
Offered the opportunity. The point I was putting across is opportunities are not offered. You prepare yourself, you position yourself, and when an opportune time comes for that opportunity, you jump into the boat. It is never prepared for you. If you expect it, you blame them.
I want to mention also William is
okay.
difficult. And also Nyaundi tried, I think he has some network issues. Sorry guys, but I think maybe you can try again or even tomorrow. But anyway, Alphonse, I want you to address this issue from Kenyatta. So I think Africans, we need to believe and appreciate ourselves. So with so many against us, how do we organize ourselves?
A quick one, how to organize ourselves. Start by organizing yourself individually. First, have the mental capacity to deal with your situations. And your situations has three things. One, it has what I call normal things, where there's no up, there's no down. Things are just plateau. They are normal. You can't climb and you can't go down, you can't go up. So that things look like it's calm. There's a lot of tranquility. So that has not much to do. Don't think about that much because that comes and goes. But think about the time when you will be moving down at a faster speed than you expected. You need good brakes. So if you wanted to be going down and then speed of taking you down gets faster, if you are not keen, then you will find yourself not able to manage. So have the capacity that when you are enjoying things, enjoy within a confinement of behavior and a confinement of contentment. Otherwise, you will get yourself enjoying until you get lost. On the other hand, build capacity to deal with adversities, to deal with negativity, to deal with things that look so thick that many people have said is impossible. Just remember, nothing is impossible, but we have enough difficult things. So when you see it, don't see the impossible, see the difficult. And when you see a difficult thing ahead of you as a problem, a solution is ready for it. So that's the first thing. So once you have built that capacity, then in your circle, you will get 2 or 3 people who believe and reason like you. Start acting together. Then others who believe in you will join. What I've seen happening in life, and I have been an activist, I've been on the street, I've trained people to be on the street, And majority of the people whom I've even given strategy and worked with them and taken the street are more prominent on the street than myself. But I am with them on the street. If they are even taken by police, we will be in the police places together. We must know how they must be released. And then when we are in the boardroom, I've also been in the boardroom because the capacity to be there is there. Yeah, and when we're in the show like this, I also believe I have some value, and when I come here, I give the value. So be in a position to handle resistance, but give other people also the space. It's not lost when you lose it. It is just postponed if you believe in it and if you must get it.
Thank you for that perspective, Alphonse. So, guys, I want maybe we discuss about the way forward, and then we'll come to the final remarks, and then we'll finish this show tonight. So, Kevin, what's the way forward for the young people? Kevin?
Yes. Okay, so I think most of us have been arguing, I think, from historical injustices or something like that, but we need to realize that pandemics shape history. Pandemics bring changes, and these are some of the things that they not only bring death, they not only bring grief, but they also bring with them transformations in medicine. This is an opportunity for us to improve. So I think that is what I can say at this time.
Amazing. So this is the opportunity to bring change. Jackie, what's the way forward?
I quite like what Kevin has said. Pandemics change. I mean, they shape history. If you look at the British NHS, for instance, which is a really incredible to me, because I have benefited from it. I have had children in there that I've had treatment under the NHS. It's a really wonderful system of medical care for a country. Now, it was created at the back of a pandemic, the World War II, the British welfare system, right at the back of World War II. So, guys, pandemics indeed do shape history. So we need to use this pandemic to create some things, or rather to dream new things that can actually help us as a people. I saw the governor of Mombasa distributing food to people. A few days before that distribution started, I had made a post that we need a welfare system in Kenya. Imagine if he was distributing food using a well-known system, knowing everybody's name, knowing everyone who is in need. Imagine how wonderful that would be. Museveni in Uganda, he is apparently dropping food in people's doorsteps, some grains for every family. Imagine if that could happen in Kenya. We need systems that work. We need the poorest of the poorest, the voices of the poorest people heard. And we need to find a way of making that possible, because that is when a system works. If everyone is known by their names, by the state, then that system is a system that works. We need to work on that. We need to fix our country once and for all.
Oh, amazing.
Yes.
The way forward for our nation in Africa. Monda?
Oh, okay. Well, for me, Alphonse said, well, every individual has got a personal space, and you have to work within your space to achieve your dream. But unfortunately, we have the system that has selfishly taken our space, and they have become a deterrent to prosperity of young people. And what young people need to do, they should not sit down and watch. When we want to talk about Fidel Castro, when we want to talk about Gaddafi, when we want to talk about the greatest revolutionaries, they participated in revolution at their young age. We are not going to say we're going to sit down and do business and then we just look at leadership. We say, okay, that's leadership. We can create our own destiny, and we ignore to question the leadership. It's our time to also shape our destiny in terms of leadership.
by asking valid questions, by sensitizing the masses, by motivating the young people, and also by doing the right thing to lead as an example. Because it also takes political responsibility for us to shape the destiny of our country.
Amazing. Amazing. Alphonse, way forward.
Way forward is that we should now transit from being or having grasshopper mentality of hopping in the grass when it's so green and eating what we can and leaving the rest to waste, and enter into the behavior of the ants, where when we have enough, we reason with it, we keep it for the time when we'll need it during the drought and scarcity. So I think this pandemic should show us what we have been lacking, and when we get enough of it, we should now build for the scarcity that will come beyond this pandemic.
Amazing, amazing. So, guys, maybe you can give your final remarks.
That's final.
I'm getting like you guys.
That was my final statement.
That was my final.
Alphonse, you need to slide into my DM. Is that your name on Facebook?
Let me just confirm.
Are you Alphonse Were on Facebook? Probably I can get to your DM and exchange some contacts.
Okay, I'm Alphonse Were or Alphonse Were. Wow, whichever you come across.
Okay,
but Patrick will sort you out. But do you have Patrick's contact?
Okay, Patrick, just get his contact to my DM, please. I don't have his phone numbers yet. You can also send me your contact, Patrick.
Yeah, I'm going to do
because
that.
I think we need to meet. When I'm in Nairobi, we should meet and argue and show me activism, man. And I also talk about politics and leadership.
All right, so Patrick, I'll give my parting shot then.
Yeah, give your parting.
I think we cannot afford to live without passion. We need to be passionate about progress. We need to be passionate about young people strategizing, organizing. Miguna says strategize, organize. You know, we have to, yes, we need young people. Any young person watching here, you cannot be only 80% into this idea of developing our country or developing something for yourself that will make our country better. Give it 100% and no less. You know, have passion and believe in your cause like there is nothing else to think about other than that one thing. So that's all I'm saying, that we really need to really go for it. Whatever passion that we need 100% focus. If it is young people, organizing young people and making sure that they are aware of the kind of opportunities out there for them, or making sure they know how to start small businesses and how to, I mean, if that is what you want to do for young people, or you want to organize, you want to provide courses for them, do it, and do it with the most passion you can in the world. So please let us live with passion. That's all I'm saying. Put passion in progress, passion in dreaming a new Kenya. We need a new Kenya. And Kevin told us that this is an opportunity for us to start over. Okay? Let's do it, guys, with a lot of passion. That's all I can say.
Amazing.
I see somebody on Facebook by name William Macnon.
Yeah.
he has mentioned me. Thank you, Macnon. You say that you salute me. I'm very grateful. We have a very great panel here that is charging everybody. So I'm grateful, Macnon, for tuning in. Team, I want to say that each one of you has great value, and I'm happy to be with you on the show. I think this is great, and we must also give it to Patrick for being such a great visionary at his age, to have such a platform starting. Jackie, you must be telling us that you do online, you teach us online.
I'm trying to do that.
Yes. So
this is all my strategy to be able to change my base from London to a little village, you know, and make more change. You know, I'm speaking what I'm doing. I'm living my words. I'm not just talking, you know. I don't want to be based here.
Okay, I one of these fine days I'll take the challenge to be a teacher on your platform and see how it goes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Come on,
And
guys. Thank you.
though I'm certain I will not do it, will not do for English, but I can guess any of the science subjects or Kiswahili for that matter.
Thank you, Alphonse.
You can tell me which one to prepare for, and then
I will tell you. I will tell you which subject. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
So guys, thank you very much. That has been really an amazing show. Yeah. So, but anyway, I want to
Patrick, sorry for my interruptions today. I've had so many of them. Can you guys allow me to appreciate my wife? You know, when you see me on the show, I'm taken care of by a very good lady. She's
let's meet her. Where is she? We want to meet her.
Can she come and say hi to us?
I don't know if she can come. Come, please, my dear. Doing something to say that she will come another time. But that lady, she told me today that I'm sweating because I must be too passionate about what I was saying today.
Thank you. Yeah, but you need passion.
Yeah, she's a good lady. So she's called Esther.
Well done. Thank you, Esther.
Okay.
But so anyway, Kevin, before we go, Kevin, I will have actually a show for you because I think you're incredible. Many young people need to know you. All right?
Yeah,
you're incredible.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jackie.
Okay, great. So we are taking this challenge. One, Alphonse is mentioning that if we have to promote who we are as Africans, we'll actually have one day in the week where we talk Kiswahili. Hata sijui kama najua kuongea Kiswahili lakini so we'll select that one day will be actually running the show in Kiswahili.
Yeah.
Also, we'll actually bring that topic about production in Africa. So we have to do this, guys. So I want to say good night, everyone. See you tomorrow and have a safe week.
Thank you. Right. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hata kwenye giza totoro, baby, nachohitaji ni uwepo wako na ni sawa. When Juliet mini Romeo, na kisha kuponi, yeah. Sikio shafunga kwa komeo, ya usisikie, Mabaya wanasema umefanya, wanasema yetu na halina, kwenye mpenzi na imani, baby. Mabaya wanasema umefanya, wanasema yetu na halina, kwenye mpenzi na imani, baby. It's kind of love, utakata kwa ila it's kind of love, utakata kwa